Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. So we're here today to learn our second stage of knitting, and this is the purl stitch. So go ahead and check out my last video if you are a very beginner, and I teach you how to cast on, how to perform the knit stitch, and also how to cast off. And today I'm just going to be showing you how to purl. So what you're going to need is a set of knitting needles. Again, I'm using 5.5mm. Again, I would advise for you to use a chunkier yarn. So I'm using this grey chunky yarn and a pair of scissors. We will begin. So purl stitch is basically the opposite to a knit stitch. You hold your knitting needles in the same way, but you knit downwards instead of upwards, so it'll be easier for me to show you than to explain it, but you get the opposite of a knit stitch. So your piece at the end of this video may look very similar to your knit stitch, but it is the opposite of the knit stitch. And when you put the knit stitch and the purl stitch together, you can create so many different stitches in knitting, which we will explore in the future. So go ahead and grab your things that you need and cast on the amount of stitches that you need for your project. Okay, so you just saw me then perform our slip knot and cast on. I've cast on 20 stitches, which will be about the size of a swatch square for you to do. So again, please go back and watch my other video to perform this first action, and now we can get on with purling. Okay, so as you can see, I'm holding my knitting needles in the exact same way that I did with my knit stitch. A nice loose grip. And again, as you progress, you will find your preference with how to hold your knitting needles. So we're going to do the opposite of what we did with our knitting. So for our first stitch in knitting, we went upwards like so. We went into the stitch and we went away from us. But in the opposite, in purl, we are going to go down towards us. So instead of going up the stitch, wrapping around, we're going to go down through the stitch, taking your yarn in front. Again, we're going to wrap anti-clockwise. We're going to push our knitting needle through away from us, and we're going to slip the stitch off. So you'll notice a few things a little bit different. Your yarn is in front. So with knitting, our yarn is actually behind our needle and we knit upwards. But with purling, we keep our yarn in front of the knitting needle like so. We keep our yarn in front, we insert our knitting needle towards us. We're wrapping again anti-clockwise. We're again pushing the needle through and slipping off. Don't worry if you haven't got this, I will show you slowly along the rest of the row, because it can be confusing when you've already been knitting or you've just got to grips with knitting and now you're starting to go the exact opposite way. So taking your needle, you're going to go through the stitch. So you're not going to go through the stitch like this, that's knitting. You're going to go through the stitch like this. You're going to wrap the yarn around anti-clockwise like so. You're going to gently push the knitting needle through and back through that stitch, and you're going to slowly slip off. Insert through, wrap around, push back through and slip off. So it is so much easier to watch me do it than for me to explain it, just so that you can see the difference. So this is knitting and this is purling. So copy me with your needles and you should get to grips with the purl stitch. You're going to go through, wrapping around, back through and slip off. Making sure that your yarn is in front and not behind. It's always in front with purl. Through. You're wrapping the yarn around anti-clockwise, just like you did with your knit stitch. And slip off. Insert, wrap around, push down and slip off. So again, copy my needles through. So instead of the knit stitch where your working needle, so your working needle is in front of your other needle, instead of behind like the knit stitch, it's in front. You're wrapping your yarn around anti-clockwise, gently pushing it down in front. So the purl stitch is in front. The knitting needle's in front, the yarn is in front, the knit stitch is behind. The knitting needle's behind, the yarn is behind. So keep going with this. It will be confusing, especially as knitting is confusing as it is for beginners. You're just starting to hold the knitting needles, you're just starting to hold your yarn, and now you're doing the complete opposite of what you've just trained your hands to do. So it will be difficult and confusing, but just make sure. So I'm at my last stitch now. So instead of going up through, you're going to go down through, wrap around and off. Okay, so I've just worked my row 1 and I will work row 2 for you again slowly, just because I know that this can be confusing and I want you to try and copy my needles and copy what I'm doing, because it is quite hard to explain and it's easier to show than explain. So go ahead and work your row 1. Go ahead and rewind if you still don't get it, or continue watching because I will continue to show you how to do this. So go ahead and work that and I'll meet you back when you've done that. Then we're going to get going with our second row. So continue to watch this really carefully, because that's the best guidance that I can give you. So go down through, making sure that your yarn is in front, so don't take it behind and get confused. Keep it in front where it is. It will automatically go in front, so don't go against the guide, go with the guide. So wrap around, push down and float up. Okay then, so as you watch this and as you learn this purl stitch, I'm going to just talk to you about a few things that you can look out for. So with this knitting series, there are a few tips and tricks that you do learn as you go along. You start to see patterns in your work, and you start to see little things. So anyway, if you'd like to see that, leave me a like on this video, and also leave me a like if you enjoyed this and found it helpful, and comment down below if you'd like to see it and what other videos that you'd like to see in the future, whether it's knitting stitches, crochet stitches or projects of any kind. So there you have 2 rows of your purl stitch. So I'm going to quicken the next row up for you, maybe the next few rows, just so that you can see how it kind of looks after a few rows of work, and then I'll finish my swatch and I'll cast off with you, and then you'll have your swatch. Okay then, so I have one more row just to finish off my swatch square, and then I'm going to cast off with you. So I'm just going to show you slowly once again in case you haven't got the purl stitch already, but go ahead and rewind the video to get a clearer explanation and clearer picture of how to purl stitch. So hopefully you have this swatch square done already, or maybe you've gone in fully and you've maybe started a scarf or a hat. For me, I would recommend maybe starting off with something simple like that. A scarf is really nice to do because it's the same row all the way along. A blanket maybe is really nice to do. Obviously it's totally your preference. Have a play around with purls and knits just to see how they differ. And you may start to notice some patterns that I'm going to talk about in the next few videos that you may notice, or you may not, don't worry, but I'll try and point them out for you in the next few videos where I talk you through some tips and tricks. Okay then, so I'm coming to the end of my last row of my swatch square, and I'm about to cast off. So casting off is going to be slightly different. Again, we're not going to do the knitted way, we're going to do the purl way. So because we purled all the way along, we're going to purl 2, so purl 2, and then we're going to take the back loop over the front loop. So it's very, very similar, but you're purling 2 instead of knitting 2. So go ahead, it can be a little bit fiddly, go ahead and work this all the way along. So just be patient with it. It will take some time for your hands to get used to even just knitting and holding the knitting needles, and then you're just changing it all around and telling it to do something different. So do just be patient with it, keep going, do a few swatch squares, and then maybe start on something simple that you may want to do, a nice knitting project. Again, start with something a little bit chunkier, just because then you won't lose interest in it and you can see your progress really easily. Okay then, so I've just cast off and chopped off my yarn. Which obviously, as you can see, they are very, very, very similar. But I'm telling you, when you put these two together in different ways, you'll notice different things start to happen. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope you have learned how to purl. Go back and rewind the video if you need to. I know I haven't really explained a lot today. It's been very difficult to explain, so it's easier to watch and copy my movements with my knitting needles. So leave me a like if you enjoyed it and found it helpful, and comment down below what other videos you'd like to see in the future, and whether you'd like to see that tips and tricks video of how to kind of differentiate, because it is very, very difficult to see when you've just got two swatches exactly the same. Also subscribe to watch all my other videos and to see future videos, and also just to be a part of this crochet and knitting community. And follow me on Instagram if you have the chance. It's at hooks.andneedles1. So thank you all, and I'll see you next week. Bye.